here to help you with breeze, planting seeds and teaching skills. Teachers turn schoolyards to dreams. Who hates school gardens with ease?
Hello and welcome to School Gardens with Ease podcast. I am your host, Leila Mireskandari, and this is episode number 10. In this episode, I will talk about the biggest obstacle not only in the way of getting a school garden started, but also a constant roadblock to its success. And that's the way almost everyone engages their community into their garden project. This episode will ruffle some feathers, so let me just say that my intention is not to polarize people or to make the community builders of this world hate me. I truly believe that community is important, and I love, love, love the community builders in this world. I only think that we need the community to be involved in school gardens in a different way. My intention is, however, to make your life as a teacher easier by removing the biggest obstacle out of your way. Because community engagement is the result of a successful school garden and not the other way around. I hope you heard that. Let me say it in a different way. Everyone thinks that school gardens should start with a group of passionate community members, mainly family members of your students, coming together to fundraise, design, build, grow, and maintain the garden. With the exception of the fundraising part, which I will get into in a whole different episode later, that's wrong and backwards. Just because everyone else does it that way doesn't mean it's right. Look at all those failed and abandoned school gardens all over the place. Why do most people think that? Because of these four reasons. Reason number one, we mistake school gardens for community gardens. I have two complete episodes dedicated already to this topic. Go listen to those later if you want to know why community gardens and school gardens are very different things. I am not an expert in growing a community garden, so maybe a community garden should get started with putting together a committee of volunteers. But I am an expert in growing school gardens, and I know for a fact that this approach will kill your school garden project before or right after germination, pun intended, or at the best case scenario, it will stunt its growth. Reason number two, we underestimate elementary and middle school students and their ability to do physical work. So we think that we need adults to do the work. I've had teachers' jaws dropped on the floor after they saw their class turning a whole grass area into a ready to plant garden in one instructional hour. Even the teachers sometimes underestimate the collective power of their students. You need no adults to touch the garden. Trust me. Reason number three, we forget that school gardens are educational tools that should start with educators and used in the classroom to teach. So it should be initiated by a teacher according to their teaching plans, not only about where food comes from and how it's grown, but also how it relates to math, science, arts, social studies, and language. That's why it should start by teachers and not parents. And only one teacher and one classroom is enough to grow a successful school garden. And when a school garden is growing, the community will naturally come and get involved to buy the seedlings, to share the food, to save the seeds, to cook, to water the garden in summer, and to start their own gardens at home using the knowledge and skills their kids gained in your classrooms. That's how the community should be engaged after the garden, not before. The only thing you might need the community's support with before the garden might be fundraising. And for that, you need a pitch and a presentation, of some kind that talks about your vision, how the garden is designed, grown, and taught in, the material you need, the educational programs that you need, etc., etc. I will dedicate an episode or two to this topic because it is important and it's a topic of another day. But to get back to the topic at hand, those are the reasons why people think they should start putting together a garden committee. First, they mistake school gardens for community gardens. Second, they underestimate the students' physical capabilities. And third, they forget that school gardens are actually teaching tools. The truth is, to grow a garden, you need no one other than you and your students and your class time. All the teaching should be done by you and all the hands on learning by your students. Teachers lead, students grow and learn, and other adults in the community, family members, the principal, the admin staff, the building caretakers and custodians watch and cheer you on. So far, we talked about why we don't need to put together a group to begin with. Now, let's talk about why it's a mistake to do it. Why am I saying that this isn't the biggest obstacle in your way? If you remember, I said there are 4 reasons people start putting together a committee at the beginning, but I only explained 3 of them. That's because the fourth reason is tightly connected to this concept of it being the biggest obstacle. The fourth reason is the teachers don't know how to grow gardens. They've never done it before in a classroom setting, and they've never been taught how to do it as a teacher in Teachers College, for example. They want to throw it out there to the community and say, come help me. Somebody tell me how to grow a tomato. Could you please come and design the garden for me because I have no clue how to do that. And I don't want to ruin it. I don't want to bear the burden of failure alone if this garden fails. So let's share the responsibilities so that we can share the blames too. Sounds like a good strategy at first, but that's not how the world works. The reality is parents don't know how to grow food either. It's an experiment for them as much as it is for you. And the more hands and minds are in such a messy experiment, the messier and more chaotic it gets. Even the farmers and avid expert gardener grandmas of your community who know how to grow vegetables, they have no clue about how to teach, and they have no clue about the context of your classroom and how this should be taught alongside the other subjects. Trust me when I say you are better off researching and winging the growing part of it on your own than trying to explain teaching, curriculum, or school and classroom logistical aspects of your life to them. Can you imagine the nightmare? Not only they don't understand your world, they even think it's not such a big deal. They undervalue your expertise and underestimate your concerns and struggles. Only another teacher knows what's going on in your classroom, or someone like me who has worked alongside teachers doing this full time for over a decade. They don't know what you mean when you say something doesn't fit in your schedule. They won't understand why you want all the work to be done by your students, the hands on aspects of the learning. They think you want to cut them out of the garden or are lazy and don't want to do the work yourself. They take your mentions of not having enough time as a silly complaint. And on top of all that, God forbid if there are 2 experts in growing something and they disagree on how it's supposed to be done. I've been in the middle of these discussions. It's a waste of time that you don't have, and it could even ruin your relationship with the community. You don't need to do any of that. The growing part is much easier than you think. And the hard part is the teaching, and you've got all that down because, in case you've forgotten, you are a teacher. Yes, you do need to know what to grow and what to avoid, how to time the plans properly for a school schedule as you have the summers off. You do need to know, how to reduce the summer maintenance, how to design and build a regenerative school garden with your class, what classroom growing tools and techniques to use, and how to connect it to your curriculum. I'm teaching you all of those things in the past episodes. I will continue to do that in the future episodes. I also have paid programs that give you lesson plans, step by step guides, all timed and everything. At the risk of tooting my own horn, I'd say if you want to fundraise for something, fundraise for those programs. At the very least, go into the links in the show notes and get started with my material for free. You want to learn the growing part of this from an expert who understands your classroom, values your expertise, and knows your struggles. Don't get yourself into the headache of organizing committee groups just because you are insecure about your growing skills. Growing a school garden is much more about teaching than it is about gardening. I've got you covered. Putting together, organizing, and managing community groups and volunteers is hard and it's time consuming. Time is precious, especially for teachers. You shouldn't spend your personal time, which you already hardly have at all, doing this. Even if someone else leads the committees and the meetings, you should still attend because their decisions affect your plans. That's precious time spent on arguing with people whose vision doesn't align with yours because they think they're growing a community garden and all you want to do is teach. And all you should want to do is teach. That's why this is the biggest obstacle because instead of easily getting started in your own classroom, teaching your own students, you'll waste time and energy organizing and managing gardening committees which will at best design and build a conventional garden that's expensive to build and to maintain both in terms of dollars and time, that's heavily relying on unreliable volunteers, it's disconnected from your classroom and curriculum, fails or doesn't produce enough to justify all that hard work and money and time, and it's abandoned the next year, becomes an eyesore, and yet another example to perpetuate this lie that school gardens don't work, are too difficult, and are not worth the trouble. Don't do this. School gardens should start with teachers, and only one is enough. The growing should be done by the students. Even the design and the building can be done by the students. I will cover the design topic in a future episode. And when the garden is growing successfully, the community connection will be more easily and naturally made because parents would love to be part of something that's already successful. They will feel proud to support a flourishing garden, as opposed to trying to convince them to help you grow a non existing garden from scratch. I know there are always those who disagree with me, and those are usually people who have done it the old way. And I can imagine going through all of that hard work in spending so much time and energy paddling against the stream and finally making the garden growing nicely. I understand why they want to defend their ways. Just because they finally got it together doesn't mean they couldn't have had it easier. It doesn't mean that you should go through the same hard work unnecessarily. And if you think that managing your community committees is easier because yours is a special snowflake of a community and people will all be reliable, kind, dedicated, and they will all agree and be harmonious with each other and there will be no conflicts, I would respectfully call you a tiny bit naive and remind you that even in that case, you are still wasting your time because you don't need to do any of that. I hope you can see the difference between the old approach and this new approach that I am suggesting. How much the old approach makes your life hard and brings your chances of success down and wastes your time, and how much the new approach makes it easier and brings your chances of success higher. Tell me what you think in the comments. Talk to you next week in a new episode. You've listened to the entire episode, and for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, please leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And please share this episode with other teachers who might be interested in this topic. See you next week for a new episode.